Hello everyone, today we're looking at the Aipas S1 amp E-Moto. Let me get right into the unboxing. Something's wrong, there's no way this is a TV, they haven't been this big and heavy since before I was born. Looking on the side, yeah, this definitely is not a TV, it's the S1 amp. This bike has a 60 volt, 28 amp hour battery and 4,000 watts of power, so it should be pretty fun to ride. Here's the first thing in the box. It's the front rim, tire, and disc brake. It's pretty beefy, so that should be good. The next items in the box are the user manual, a little wire wrap, and the 2 amp charger. The 28 amp hour battery will take 14 hours to charge with the 2 amp charger, so I can already recommend getting a faster charger. That black metal triangle piece was the chain guard. Next up is the front fender and the license plate holder. That's all the parts I can see on the top of the box, so it's time to pull the bike out. Under the bike was the toolkit and the front number plate and headlight. It looks like it also has the horn built into it. I'm already liking the black, white, and orange color scheme. It looks like they tried to not have any silver parts anywhere, besides a couple pieces of hardware. I guess I better start assembling this thing. The first thing to do is cut the big zip tie holding the front forks down. It didn't really spring up that much at all when I did it. The first assembly step is to put on the handlebars. To do this, remove these 2 bolts here and bolt them back through the triple clamp. I always recommend putting some blue Loctite on any bolts that don't have a locking feature, like a lock nut or lock washer. It's a lot better to take the time to do that, rather than have bolts falling out of your bike while you're riding it. After you get those bolts tightened up, it's time to install the rear shock. You can prop the bike up on something like this, so all the weight isn't just straight on the swing arm. The first thing to do is unscrew the bolt so it's out of the way. Then you can lift the swing arm up and align it with the shock, and then put the bolt through and tighten up the nut on the other side. Doing this one was a lot easier than the last one I did. That one didn't line up at all, but this one lined right up. After that's on, it's time to install the front tire. I like to put the rear tire up against something so I don't accidentally push the bike backward. You can go ahead and unscrew the nut and take out the front axle. Just keep in mind that the spacers go on a specific side. Looking at it from the front, the left spacer is the shorter one and the right spacer is the larger one. As long as you have the bike propped up in a good position, this part shouldn't be too difficult. Just keep sliding the axle around until it gets all the way through. After that, you can put the nut on and tighten it up. When installing the front brake, the first thing to do is take out this little wedge piece. This holds the brake pads apart during shipping so they don't go together and make it super hard to install. After that, you can unscrew the bolts. Next, put the brake caliper over the brake disc and align the holes while threading in the bolts. As soon as you get one on, the second one should be a lot easier. Each one of these bolts had 2 washers on them, which I thought was a little odd, so I just installed them with 1 washer each. However, this was a mistake, because the bolts that hold the brake caliper on are a bit too long, so if you use only 1 washer, they'll go super close to the brake disc, which just isn't safe, so make sure you use 2 washers on each. After installing the front brake caliper, I decided to check out the rear brakes, and they were completely covered with a black oily substance, which is the last thing you want on your brake calipers, so I used some brake clean to clean it off, and then also clean the front brake. Next comes the front fender, which is just 3 bolts and 3 washers, so it's pretty simple. Now it's time for the chain guard. It looks like it just bolts on like this. However, the bolts have 3 washers on the left one and only 1 on the right, so it looks like we're going to be stacking some washers again. It makes sense because that bracket is definitely not aligned with the chain. It looks like 1 washer on the outside of each bolt and 2 washers on the inside of the forward bolt is going to work perfect. Now on to the front headlight, number plate, and horn. The first thing to do is unscrew this bolt and spacer from the triple clamp. After that, plug in the little yellow plug. These plugs are always pretty stiff, but they have a little mark on them to show the alignment. Push the number plate down into the 2 cylinder pieces on the front fender, and then push it down further to align the bolt hole and put in the bolt and spacer. The spacer goes behind the front number plate to space it out away from the forks. Now it's time to sit on the bike and tighten all the controls down in the correct position. On the left side, I just tightened down the brake lever at a good position so my hand isn't too far up or too far down. On the right side, I started messing with it, but I realized that the ignition is kind of in a bad spot because the brake lever can't get far enough outward to be horizontal with the throttle. The brake lever also can't tilt down far enough because it's hitting the throttle back here. So I think I'm just going to take the brake lever off, move the ignition over, and then put the brake lever back on. I don't really like the ignition in this position anyways, because with the key in it, you might jam your knee into it if you crash or something. With it down here, it'll be more out of the way. I think that's the best position. I could also put it like this, but if you fall forward, you'll go right on the key, so I don't think I'm going to do this. For the screen, you just have to unscrew these two bolts and then bolt them through the little mount right here. After that, you can tilt the screen to the correct position and then tighten up these two bolts. For the license plate mount, you have two options, just this black piece of metal or the actual license plate mount. I'm not going to put either on because I never plan on running a license plate since I'm just going to be riding off-road. And with that done, the bike is fully assembled. It's never going to look this clean again, but that's okay, it's meant to be ridden. Here it is next to the Haybike Villain. As you can see, they are very close in size. The Amp has a slightly longer wheelbase and a slightly lower seat. Another interesting comparison is the motor size. The Villain motor's diameter is 123 millimeters, while the Amp's diameter is 160 millimeters. That's a pretty big difference. Although the Amp's motor is 113 millimeters long and the Villain's is 138, that still means the Amp's motor is 38% bigger than the Villain's motor. The phase wires are also 80% larger, although that could just be from the Amp having thicker insulation on its wires. Either way, this motor could probably output a lot more power than it's doing on this bike. I really need to clean out my Villain. It's completely packed with dirt. It looks like it's all the way in the other side too. Yeah, this is horrible. It's all in the chain. You're not going to have that problem on the Amp. It's all wide open and easy to clean, plus the motor is definitely getting more airflow. Speaking of the motor, you can feel that larger diameter giving it way more torque when you hit the gas from a stop. In that clip, it spun on the slick concrete floor in my garage, but if you're on a grippier surface like concrete or hard dirt, it will flip you over backward if you aren't ready for it. At this point, it was dark outside, so I decided to take it out and try out the headlight, taillight, and turn signals. This headlight is great, it's at the perfect angle, and it has the sharp cutoff that I like to see. The taillight is fine. It turns off when you turn off the headlight, which is good because it won't slowly suck your battery dry when you're riding during the day. The turn signals are pretty good. They have the animation that starts in the center and goes to the outside, so it's very visible. A few days after this, I decided to take the S1 amp and my other e-bikes to my grandparents' farm to see if the S1 amp can keep up with an upgraded e-bike and some quads. First things first, it's time to do the top speed run while I still have full battery. Pay attention to how far off the speedometer on the bike is. I get up to 40 miles per hour GPS speed, and the speedometer shows 48 miles an hour. That is way off. If the controller was programmable, you could calibrate it, but since it's not, you can't. Also, I could probably get the bike to go a little faster if I had better conditions. It was pretty windy on top of the hill when I recorded this. You can easily start doing a wheelie at low speeds, but the throttle just doesn't have a good enough response to maintain it unless you are really good at doing wheelies. Not only does the throttle not have a super quick response when you twist it, but when you untwist it to stop giving it throttle, it also doesn't have a quick response. This gives it a really mushy feeling, like your throttle input is being delayed. I had to go hop on my Villain to compare to make sure I wasn't just imagining things, and sure enough, this has a lightning quick response. That's why I love these far driver controllers. The brakes on the amp are perfectly fine for a bike this size. I can easily come to a stop with just one finger on each brake. The suspension and stability feel totally fine. I can just bomb down this rutted dirt road no problem. I'm coming up on the bottom of a hill right here, and you can see it loses some speed, but it's nothing crazy. It still carries me all the way up. After that, it was time to hit some jumps and hill climbs at the dam. From the amount of time I've ridden this bike so far, I knew it would go up the side of the dam no problem, even from a dead stop. If you start with the run-up, the bike doesn't have the power to keep you going at the same speed, but as soon as it slows down, that low-end torque kicks in. Now it's time to try the amp on some rougher ground down by the pond. The bike seems to handle it fine, even if I can't sometimes. Riding up a little obstacle like this is no problem. After filming those clips, we went and did some other stuff, but later in the evening, I decided to ride the bike around until the battery totally died. Since this bike has a 60 volt 28 amp hour battery, it actually has 6% higher capacity than the battery in my upgraded Villain, so it's actually a good amount of capacity. However, when the battery got really low, the throttle issue got even worse. It was powering the motor for half a second after I let off the throttle. I can understand why you might want a mushy throttle on a bike like this, since it will most likely be someone's first bike and you don't want a super responsive throttle, because that could make riding it a lot harder. However, I don't know why this would be battery level dependent, it just seems kinda weird. Anyways, I knew I had to try this bike out our local trails because I knew it would just eat up all these hill climbs. Whenever I put a large load on the bike suspension, like when I land from a jump, the front tire will rub the front fender a little bit, which is that buzzing sound you hear. I had to let my brother give it a shot. One thing about this bike that I knew could be a potential problem is how low the kickstand sits. It also isn't shaped to allow the bike to slide over obstacles. Instead, it'll hook obstacles as hard as possible, which is what happened here. I rode up the hill climb and I tried to jump over the root at the top, but the kickstand hit and stopped the bike instantly. Near the end of this ride, my brother's friend looped out this bike and scraped up the right brake lever. It also made the handlebars and the front wheel go slightly out of alignment, but that was easy enough to fix by just holding the front wheel with your feet and cranking the handlebars. Of course, it also broke the tail light. The actual light still works, but the turn signals don't work anymore. You can see them flashing on the display, but there's no light in the back. To conclude my review of this bike, I think it just needs a software update to make the throttle more responsive and to make the speedometer calibratable, and it would be a super good option for a budget E-Moto. I guess the seat could be a bit thicker. There's a few thin spots that made it uncomfortable to ride after a while. While I was doing some research on the controller to see if there was any way to calibrate the speedometer or make the throttle have a better response, I figured out you can actually run an auto learn on the motor by pressing the mode change button 10 times right after you start it up. I don't think there's really a reason for you to do this. It seems like something they just do once at the factory and call it good. I don't think they expect you to be swapping out motors and having to run auto learn. Anyways, I decided to tear down the bike to take a closer look at its components. Under this big cover here is the controller tucked up in there. Here's what it looks like. It's got the battery harness on one side and the phase cables coming out of the other side. It says that it's a 240 amp controller, however that's the phase amps, not the battery amps, otherwise this thing would be a lot faster. The battery wires and the phase wires have these rubber covers to stop water, dirt, or mud or anything else from getting on them. The motor connection actually has 8 wires instead of the normal 6. I don't know if this is a Hall effect or an encoder motor, but there's definitely something else going on. This other plug wasn't plugged into anything, so it might be a programming port. That's basically what I expected to see, but now it's time to take a peek into the battery. I didn't even see the battery information sticker cause it was on the bottom side of the battery. After you take this panel off, you can take a look at the wiring. I won't be able to pull this actual pack out cause it's glued on the bottom, so this'll have to be it for the battery teardown. There really is a bunch of empty space in here. I can fit my whole fist in there. I get that you need some room for the wires, but it looks like they're just fluffing up the size of this battery to make it look bigger. While reassembling the bike, I realized the clear coat is peeling right off the plastics in multiple locations. It looks exactly the same under the clear coat, so I guess you could take the time and scratch it all off, but I'm not going to bother. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you want to purchase the Aipas S1 amp, I'll have a link in the pinned comment and the description that'll take you to the product page and give you a small discount. Thanks for watching.